You're listening to the Downshift podcast, where four mates from Melbourne take you trackside for all the action in Formula One, breaking down the races, the drama, and everything in between, all with a little banter and a lot of passion. If you love motorsport and cars, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you're always on the grid with us. And if you want to support the team, leave us a 5-star review. So let's get into another action-packed episode. It's lights out, drop the clutch, and let's get racing. Hello and welcome to the Downshift as we welcome back Huppy and Lockie from their time in the sand, as Swags and I still were freezing our butts off down in Melbourne. We've got back into racing with Spa, a track that never fails to deliver. But after a dry practice and sprint, we actually saw rain an hour and a half before the race, only to dry out and then to start racing again half an hour before the race. And as we saw the FIA being over conservative, wanting to make sure that they stopped the race, and had all of us watching the TV and the commentators from Sky having to fill an hour and 20 minutes of riveting commentary before we started going again.
Riveting. Yeah, that's the word. Yep.
So we saw Pirelli, who tried to mix things up a little bit as well with their tyre selections, going for the C1, C3 and C4, leaving the gap between the C1 and C3, trying to create a little bit of a change to the racing format and hoping for a two-stop race. But unfortunately, the rain and the inters put a stop to that. So, Huppy, why don't we kick in regards to that start and what we were thinking about the events at Spa?
Yeah, well, I guess we had the sprint and the main race, and second place basically won the race on lap one. They often say you can't win the race on lap one, but evidently at Spa you can. And although you said this track always delivers, I'd have to say it really did not deliver great racing and overtaking on the weekend. But it was interesting that...
Unless you were Lewis Hamilton.
Lewis did all right. He was out of place when he qualified, so he was probably an exception. But any of the rest of the grid were all reasonably close in performance, and they probably qualified where they should have. So, yeah, a bit of a ball fest, that race, apart from lap one, where Oscar made a great move. And although, Christian, you were saying that Pirelli had a basically a 2 compound gap between the hard and the medium to try and encourage some different strategy and undercuts and whatever, it just turned out that people started on the inters, and then after 11, 12, 13 laps changed onto pretty much everyone was on mediums apart from Lando and Hadjar and Sainz, I think, and ran mediums to the end. So it was a single stop race in the end. So could have been a bit more exciting if Lando hadn't made a few mistakes at the end, but overall a very good result for McLaren. They showed how strong they were at this track again, and a good result for Charles coming third.
Well, it's quite interesting when they brought the cars in for their first tyre change, watching just the degradation on those inters. They were bald. Like they had no traction left on them at all. They were completely done, those tyres, and it was really interesting to see the start of the race versus when they brought them in. But they were completely done.
Lewis was one of the first ones to come in, and there was nothing left on that.
Yeah, they're a softish compound. So yeah, as soon as you lose the water on the track and you're running on a dry track, it just eats them up, and they become pretty much slicks that don't perform that well, as you saw.
Well, they're running 20 seconds a lap slower, wasn't it? On those inters versus having the slicks tyres. So there's
they will do.
Large difference between the two of them.
Yeah, big difference in grip. And then Hamilton made the early call as well, Christian. Like, although he got some overtakes done, he jumped a heap of people by pitting on lap 11 and got a good undercut there and came out. And it was the right time to pit. He did well. And I think he came up to 6th place after his pit stop and pretty much held that to the end.
7th in the end. So, made up 11 positions. So, a great effort for him in regards to that. But if we take... And we can go into a little bit more detail in regards to the race. But as we're saying, if we take a little bit of a step back, we did see that much to, and as Schwags and I were talking about in the preview of this, the Borefest that is a sprint race, we did see that for qualifying, Piastri set the new track record of 140.510, which beat Sergio Perez's track record from last year. So we saw some really good performance there from Oscar in sprint qualifying.
Yeah, super fast. I think that really showed everyone how good a package that McLaren is at that track, at least. And Lando didn't get it together, obviously, but for Oscar admitted it was a great lap. But wow, it was a big step up over the rest of the field. I think everyone else would have been a bit worried watching that lap time.
But it didn't help him though, did it? Like Max got the jump on him by turn 5, I think it was. He sort of came past, and then from then on, there just wasn't. I don't know. He wasn't catching him. Wasn't
at Spa. You've got such a long, it's like 20, 22 seconds of full throttle. So you can think of, because they go flat out from turn 1 all the way up to the first chicane at the end of the Kemmel Straight. Yeah, even like Eau Rouge and Radeon is basically full throttle. So if you get a good start, you've got that slipstream to get past them. And that's exactly what Max did. After what we saw in the sprint race was that Red Bull were running low downforce. So he had lots of straight line speed to get past Oscar. And the McLarens were running higher downforce. It was dry track, dry conditions. So for one lap, high downforce is great. But when it comes to trying to overtake, even in DRS, high downforce hurts you. You just don't have that speed. So, yeah, Oscar just couldn't get back past.
Yeah, and we saw that in regards to Oscar for his quali lap, that through Sector 2, and the car was designed to be performing high in Sector 2, but he was pulling it out in the first and third sectors, which gave him that unreal lap time. But when, and Happy, you mentioned it before, is you say that you can't win a race in the second lap, but yeah, with Verstappen taking Piastri at the start of that, Piastri just had to hold off Norris through that sprint race to be able to take the second place and not let Norris get through.
Yeah. Look, it's really hard to overtake in Spa through that middle section, that middle sector, because it's twisty, there's corners and whatever. So the only real opportunities are basically down the end of the Kemmel Straight, up towards turn 4 and 5, or down the back straight towards the last chicane. So yeah, difficult task. But that would have informed the teams what to do for qualifying for the main race, because they were expecting rain. So I think we saw McLaren probably backed off the downforce a little bit, and Red Bull increased their downforce a bit. So they're probably more similar in terms of downforce and balance, yeah, when they got to quali.
And that's with the rules, the change now being with the sprint race. It used to be that you couldn't change your setup. This year, that rule has changed, so that after the sprint race, you are actually allowed to make those adjustments to your car, which then goes into quali for the main race. So it does give them the opportunity to be able to test that out.
For me this weekend, it seemed usually you've got the 3 practice sessions, and they fine tune, and then do qualifying. And obviously, instead of that, you've got practice, sprint quali again. Yeah, they seem to be a few teams seem to be just missing those additional practice sessions to just smooth out what was going to work. And you're right, it looks like, Red Bull went the low downforce angle to get that, because they probably haven't had the speed that the McLarens have had necessarily. So they're probably making that up with that, but then and just sort of rely on Max to do his thing, through the corners and stuff. So
yeah, I think you're right about the practice sessions. Like on a normal weekend, you've got those 3 sessions you can run to cast a wider net, try a few different sort of setup variations in between drivers, and then you've got a lot of data to work with, and you can decide on what you think is going to be the best sort of race and quali setup when you get into sort of FP3. And by then, every team's got a better idea. So I thought it was interesting that in the sprint qualifying, there was actually a reasonable gap between all the teams, between McLaren and everyone else, whereas in previous rounds, we've seen a much narrower time gap in the field. Like everyone's more dialed in. They found the best setup for their car to get the most out of it. Whereas, yeah, the sprint weekends put a bit more pressure on teams to get that right.
And what was interesting is, and we get the press releases from Pirelli, and I'll throw this out. Lockie, is your thoughts? After the sprint, the headline from Pirelli was Verstappen, the sprint king. Norris gets his revenge in qualifying, and Piastri loses out twice. Harsh?
Well, based on the results for the next day, I think they might want to rethink that headline there.
Retract.
Well, yeah. I think, though, Verstappen still being sprint king is probably pretty accurate. For him to jump around and just get out in front and hold that, complete kudos to him. He did really well. But I wouldn't say Norris gets his revenge in qualifying. No. And certainly Piastri did not lose out twice. When you can take the points for the weekend, you'd rather take that than pole position.
Yep.
Yeah, that press release might have come out a bit earlier than Sunday evening or Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, and I think that overtake that Max did on lap 1 in the sprint was a lot easier than what Oscar accomplished in the main race on a wet track with that visibility and so on. So a bit easier for Max in the sprint race, but Oscar committed to the move and got it done and did a great job in the main race to get that win and put Lando under pressure again.
Mm.
And he skipped away so quickly once he took him too. Like he was 2 seconds away, a lap. Like
really
he was
quickly.
down the road and gone.
Yeah, well, the first thing you want to do is make sure after a couple of laps you're far enough ahead that the car in second's not going to get DRS. So he really wanted to get that sort of 2-3 second gap if he could. Yeah.
And look, Schweig's comment that you made in regards to how you see with the practices that you build and build and build. This is a question for me in regards to we see with Piastri that he does build through the practices and through the quali. And one of the question marks for me was as to whether or not that is him needing to build or that's just his process. And with there being the sprint is you just don't have the time to build. And Piastri showed that. He doesn't need that time to build. That's just as he goes through and works through the car and happy to your point, they can adjust and fine-tune the setup. He showed, obviously, by setting a new track record that he's completely capable of just delivering straight away.
Yeah, and look, and the set was great. Like I saw some onboard of Oscar's quali lap and Max's quali lap. The steering wheel movement for Oscar was just so smooth. It looked like he was going slow around the track. Like slow is fast. You know, it just looked effortless. The car looked super balanced, nice to drive. Whereas Max was like working a bit harder at the steering wheel. He had little moments. There were adjustments. You know, he was working harder to get the speed out of it. But that McLaren looked absolutely dialed in that quali setup. It really did.
So as we start to then move towards the main race, so. I've got to say, in regards to the grid walk, for a commentator, which I give a little bit of stick in regards to Nico, we had the combination of Martin and Nico on the grid walk with very few celebrities, obviously, given that it was quite wet.
It was bucketing down.
They were there. They were just undercovering the stands, mate.
Exactly.
But I actually, for Nico, who likes to be a little bit controversial and push the boundaries a little bit, we had a couple of interesting interactions with both Jos and Valtteri Bottas. So what were our thoughts on that team? We had, let's start with Jos.
Well, they were trying to wind Jos up, weren't they? They're all hunting for that angle on Max, and they'll be asking the bloke who makes the sandwiches soon what he knows about Max moving to Mercedes. Like they're just trying everyone. I mean,
but that's the question to ask him. What I like about Nico is I don't think he's looking to stir trouble. I think Nico's just blunt and honest and direct. Like that's all he is, and so that's what's great about him. He's just going to ask the blunt question. You know, like, are you happy now, Joss? You know, like you wanted him gone a year and a half ago, and then all of a sudden he's quiet. Like I thought that banter was awesome. Well done, Nico.
Yeah, and that's where credit's due. I really enjoyed that you know, Jos is there going, you know, oh, that was a year ago and it wasn't, it was management's decision. So we're keeping very clear of that conversation.
Yeah, he wasn't involved at all with that conversation. He was right outside the room, not in there at all. No, different.
Sure.
Well, it was interesting too when they were asking too, every person they came up to, whether it was Zach or whoever it was, oh, you know, how do you think it is without Christian Horner this weekend? And all of them just deflected the question beautifully and went, oh, well, you know, it's probably can't discuss that right now. You know, let's just focus on the rush. Not one of them bit and went down the, woo, it's great. They all took the party line and just media training came in very handy for that one.
There's really not much anyone can say, really. Like the news has happened. It's been and gone. Formula One is a fast-moving sport. Like, you know, all of a sudden, you know, next weekend it'll be forgotten about, basically. No one's going to mention it. Unless
we'll have the next controversy.
Unless Christian tries to buy Aston Martin or something like that, or Alpine.
No,
Alpine, sorry.
Yeah, come on.
Oh, am I starting rumours again? Oh, my God. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, the good one was, though, when they talked to Bottas, and that was a good one, saying congratulations on the sign of Cadillac. Sorry, I can't hear you, as he just walks off. Like. Hopefully that's actually correct. I'd like to see him driving for Cadillac.
Well, the good money is on the fact that both him and Checo will be driving for Cadillac next year.
I think with some of the social media that Valtteri's put out, it looks pretty likely he's already signed on the dotted line for them. But yeah, love to see it. Good on Nico for being blunt and just asking the questions. I thought that was really good.
You don't ask, you don't get.
Exactly.
And the other rumour out there is that apparently Christian has been speaking to Cadillac for a bit of time as well. So there is rumour that Christian could be going to Cadillac in the new year.
Time will tell.
Yeah, he might have a few options around the place. I don't know if any of the rumours are correct or not. But, obviously Red Bull's got him on some gardening leave, so he's got to sit on his hands for a while anyway, by the sounds of it.
To be fair, though, you have to feel a little bit sorry for Martin Brundle, though. When they had that delay for an hour and 20 minutes, the poor dude ran out of people to talk to. Like, he went up, he exhausted every single person he could possibly talk to. And I think one of the comments at them was, he goes, I've got no one else to speak with now. Like, he would been going into pits and talking to drivers, and I think you turn around at one stage and went, that's it, I've got no one left. Like,
I thought,
poor guy.
The funniest bit was at the end when they go up to the drivers. They're about to do the national anthem stuff, and the drivers are going to line up on their little V shape and everything. Nico just walks straight up to, I think it was Bortoletto, and starts talking to him, and you can hear Brundle going, "Oh, what? We're not allowed to do that. We're not allowed to do that." Martin was pretty worried about it, but Nico. Oh, Nico. I love Nico. Yep, he gave zero poops. He just went for it. It was good.
Well, can I just jump in there before we get into the race? Because the race was probably not the most interesting. Like, we're going to talk about quali for the race, because there was a fair bit going on in quali. Like, there was, Piastri nearly didn't make it through after Q2. Like, it was pretty dicey for him. He was down in 14th, was it, or 15th? I think it was 14th, wasn't it?
The track was evolving pretty quick. Yeah, I think he was 10th or something in Q2.
And he got very unlucky because he missed track limits on one of his laps, which would have put him up to, or it did put him up to first,
it was a flyer,
I think. And he was just missing that line on the what is it, E Rouge. So he just missed that. But then, ironically, too, later on, that's where Hamilton also missed track when it came to
it was a shocker
qualifying
for
that as well.
Let's separate the two, because I think there's two really good points to talk about here. So, if we look at Piastri and what was interesting for me was they didn't show the footage again, because when I was watching that, I was actually questioning as to whether or not he'd gone over track limits, looking at, because it was actually from the air intake cam, and looking at it, it looked as though his left tyre was still on the track. And from that regards, they've said, track limits, and we never saw the footage again. So, it was pretty tight.
Yeah. There was no footage anytime from that angle, except there was one when Oscar overtook Lando in the main race. There was the chopper vision, which you saw afterwards, after the cool down room. They showed it a bit where he overtook him. But on the other one, when Lewis did it and when Oscar did it, you didn't see the other angle. And apparently there's CCTV stuff that the stewards have to look at all that. But you looked at they showed you like the wheel, and there's a white line, the blue line, and then the ripple strips, and they showed where the guard comes down and meets the chassis, or there was sort of like a V, and they just show where they put a dot around where it was. It was like right on that blue line, and I think both Hamilton and Oscar that blue line was right in that junction. And again, you couldn't see the tyre from that angle, but they were both very similar in position on. And look, you can only trust that the stewards, saw what they saw on the other side.
Yeah, they've got lots of extra cameras aimed at corners, so they can have a look at that sort of stuff. But I mean, still, what surprises me is that other series around the world, like V8 supercars, they've got a transponder in the car, and so they actually use like a wire across the curb in the track. So when that transponder goes over that wire or whatever, that's a curb strike. So it's pretty accurate way of doing it, rather than having people manually adjudicating how much tyres over the line. Like, I don't know why they just don't stick a transponder or two in the cars and use technology to determine whether they're cutting the curb. But
the transponders in the Formula One cars have been pretty accurate of late too.
As does George Russell.
Yeah. Well,
didn't
Fred say they'd lost Hamilton at one stage a few races ago? So we didn't know where he was.
Exactly. But anyway,
they're great, so they're fine. Yep.
I don't think McLaren protested it. So look, it must have been a invalid lap. But he was lucky to get through. He was.
Yeah, he was very lucky. And then we look at Hamilton, and I mean, speaking about Fred saying we lost Hamilton, we saw Hamilton on the bus stop, which is the last chicane just before get onto La Source, where spun out completely, and then seemed to position his car where, look, really the stewards should be giving a major penalty for that. He impacted a number of qualifying laps for the drivers coming through.
It was quite strange. Look, because if his car had drive, he should have moved, because being stationary at that point in the track, it's a yellow flag scenario for that sector. So no driver is allowed to better their PB time. They have to go slower through that sector. So yeah, you're right. It would have screwed over a bunch of people on a final lap.
Yeah, well,
it was odd, and he was there for a long time, just not really. And it felt a little bit like he was just waiting for traffic to go through, and he was looking for a safe place to, because he then was side onto the track, so he had to pull out and either spin around and get straight, or cut across pretty much the whole track to get through. And I thought at one stage, is he trying to cut back and get into pit lane from there, maybe because it was, maybe he could have maybe just made it, but I'm like, maybe he's going, yeah, I'll get back in there, do tyres or something, and just do a reset.
But the way he was pointing, like he could have just done a tight left onto that straight on the track there, and he's well out of the way of other cars, because they all come out of that chicane out onto the right-hand side. So if he had to just come out on the left and cruised along, there would have been green flag conditions again, no worries. So I originally thought he was trying to get back in the pits as well, because he was sort of angling, the car was angled towards the pit entrance. He would have gone over curbs to do it, but yeah.
I mean, maybe that's what he was intending, and then sort of realised that, hang on, there's a few too many cars coming through, I can't do that. But I mean, who knows? But yeah, it was particularly odd of Lewis to just do that, I think.
Yeah, so we then got into the race and we saw the formation lap under the safety car. It was red flagged for the FIA, identifying that it was too wet, and so they were going to hold the race. We had Verstappen comment over the radio that they should just run under the safety car as there's more rain coming. They were predicting in about 10 or 12 minutes. So that would have helped dry out the track. What were your thoughts there, Lockie?
To be fair, it wouldn't have mattered if they'd continued after that safety car. The amount of rain that fell, it would have been red flag, and they would have all been back in the pits anyway. So they would have maybe got 2 or 3 laps in, and then they would have been back in the pits. So that would not have actually helped it. But I personally think the FIA has actually come to Melbourne, and they've come to the state of Victoria and borrowed the How to Run a Nanny State handbook, and they're reading it page by page and inserting that into the race rules, because they are so overcautious on some of these things. You go, if all the drivers want to go out and race, why don't you let them go out and race? They would be the ones going, look, it's not quite right. Can we set a lap or two? But they're all going, right, let's go. And they're like, oh, we'll just wait another couple of minutes. And you're like, waste of time.
They did seem to wait a long time. Yeah. They
waited till the sun came out.
Well, the sun had been out for a while. And then, there's no rain around. There's some blue sky. Then there's another 10 or 15 minutes, for people to get their gear sorted out. And then when the safety car did come out, there was a bit of water on Kemmel, but not a huge amount. The rest of the track looked pretty good. So,
even the rooster tails were fairly clear. Like they weren't heavy rooster tails and all that. So
most of the water had cleared. And so at that point, it's the track's raceable, as Brundle said as well on commentary. We're all sitting there watching this going, come on, what safety car's light's got to come off. We've got to get going here. And they went around for 3 laps, in these conditions. Anyway.
But all the commentators were saying, okay, this should be good. Let's go. And it was 5 or 8 minutes after the commentators were like, no, give them the 10-minute warning, that the FIA then went, oh, okay, now we'll give them the 10-minute warning. So there was another, 10, 20 minutes of wasted time that they could have raced.
A long delay.
Because the big difference here is what's called standing water. And so where you've actually got water which is staying on the track, which creates a aquaplane type scenario, which makes it slippery. There was no standing water, and that was quite clear through most of that time. So, but look, it gave 4 drivers a bit of an advantage in regards to, we had Alonso, Antonelli and Hamilton, who had started from the pits due to a power unit change. And we had Sainz, who also had some setup changes that meant that they had to start from the pits. So normally what would happen is that under a race start, you'd have all the cars go off, and then you'd have those cars join from the pits at pit limits. They were able to get behind the pack and be close to the pack for the start, which there was the debate as to whether or not it would be a standing start or a rolling start.
But then you had the drivers saying how much extra water was on the right-hand side of the grid versus
that's what
the
Lando
left-hand
was
side. So
concerned
they were
about.
making it quite, there's a lot more water on this side, a lot more water on this side, which would obviously mean
Lando was starting on the inside, so he doesn't want to start on the wet part of the track. So I completely understand why it was a rolling start. Yeah.
So half the drivers were happy for it to be a standing start, and half of them weren't.
Yeah, and it made no difference for Lando anyway. So,
no, it didn't.
No, so we saw the start of the race, and look, Oscar wanted a standing start because that put him on the outside of the track and gave him an advantage. But happy that didn't make a difference.
No, Oscar got a great start behind Lando. He nailed that. He was paying attention, and into turn one, that's where Lando knows you need to get the best exit possible, and he got a little bit sideways, a bit too much throttle, which impacts his speed down the whole straight. Oscar, on the other hand, no mistakes, perfect exit, was right on him. And as they went through Eau Rouge and up over Radion, Oscar was already right behind him, moved out, and was far enough ahead to get the move done before the first chicane, basically. So, and that was basically game over at that point, it turned out. So, good move in the wet. Oscar had bigger balls up Radion and held more throttle and held better speed up there and got the move done.
It was interesting at one point, the commentators were going through, I think it must have been sprint quali laps compared Lando to Oscar, because I think Oscar got ahead on that quali. But and it was fine tuning stuff. They were showing the red lines on the data, and just how Oscar was slightly slower into the corner, but in a slightly better position to get him out of the corner. And it was all such minute stuff that just gave him that little bit of an extra edge coming out of the straight. But it kind of looking at that going, yeah, it's such minuscule stuff, but it just shows that Oscar's just so refined, perhaps as a how to read the track and how to read what to do and where to get the minuscule gains out, because that's what you need.
Yep.
Yeah, unrattled. And I mean, as we went through that, and especially, and as we're going through the race, and we'll come to the tail end of it shortly, but those little mistakes, but we saw that all the cars pretty much held on to the inters between the 11th and the 13th lap. And then it was a case of coming in and making those decisions on tyres. And we saw Piastri come in that little bit earlier on lap 12, take the mediums, and that seemed to be a team decision. But what was interesting for me was then on the next lap, you had Will, who came on the radio to Lando, basically going, "We've got some hards here. What do you reckon?" And so Lando's gone, "Oh, you'll take those." And literally it was almost as he was coming into pit lane, and so throwing those hards on there. So for me, it didn't seem like a strategic decision. It was almost like I
think it was, yeah, because Oscar commented after the race when he was asked about hards versus mediums, and he said that was our strategy too. If we were going to be in that position in second place at that pit stop, they probably would have gone for the hard to go long. So I think the teams would have discussed that with each driver beforehand. So as to whether they thought that tyre would last to the end of the race or not at that stage, I don't know. I suspect that most of the teams who went on to the mediums, which was 90% of the field, probably expected they would do another stop before the end of the race. Yeah.
Mm.
And to be fair, we bagged Ferrari significantly, but this is the one race they actually got their pit stop strategy correct.
They nailed it.
When they pitted Hamilton and got him back in the race.
Yep. That was a great
actually
undercut.
A brilliant strategy by them.
Yep. Made a big difference to his finishing position and to their manufacturer championship points as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, they're the only other team that finished both in the top 10.
Yep.
Along with...
Yep.
And his driving was exceptional. His overtaking, he did some beautiful overtakes through that race. And it was good to see Hamilton in Hamilton form.
It was good to see Hamilton. I mean, I didn't really see him after the race, but it was good to see him actually have some would call it a successful day. I don't know what you'd call it exactly, whether Hamilton thought the same, but, I saw him after, I think it was sprint quali and even regular quali, and, they were asking him tough questions about the car and is it better, and he didn't want to say much.
No, he looked despondent, didn't he?
He was not in a good place, and he was sort of shaking his head sideways to sort of, suspension package been good? No. Didn't say much. I'm like, you just felt
to be fair, I think a reasonable day
time.
from 18th to 7th. I think that's a reasonable day, Dan. As a driver, I think you'd take
no
that.
doubt. No,
Absolutely.
it's good that he had that after the quality sessions that he had. I mean, we didn't see anything of him after the race. Well, I didn't see any interviews of him after the race, but yeah, no, he had a good day.
I mean,
he's still got the fire, isn't he?
Dan, and both you and I said we would have given him driver of the day.
They're voting for him, and I mean, like, it's like, who else has done anything? Like, no one's really done anything else. That was the most interesting part of the race, watching Hamilton overtake lots of people.
He maximised the result, yeah. And Leclerc also said in an interview that was the best he could do. Their car doesn't have anything else in it. So he doesn't feel like they can really get much more pace out of it. And they're sort of, well, at least Leclerc feels like he's maximising their package and that there's no secrets to unlock an extra half a second anywhere. And Hamilton, has obviously been struggling a bit more with it. But when it comes to the actual race, Lewis is a bit like Max. He just seems to get the most out of the car.
But you watch when Lewis caught up to where he was, he couldn't then go any further either. Like, he was then stuck in that pace. That was as far as he could get. He could neither gain nor get past that, where he was. So that was it. He was
like most of the field at that point. Yeah. I mean, as everyone's on the same tyre. They've all done the same number of laps. They're running in dirty air. It's hard. You need a big advantage to get past someone.
So we've seen here Ferrari, who have introduced their rear suspension package, and seem to be still focused on 2025. Are we starting to see the resurgence of Ferrari?
No.
Sorry, did anyone want to think about that?
Yeah. Sorry.
They're on a journey.
Was that a 10-minute conversation, Christian? Or like,
you want me to just to elaborate?
Don't worry about creating content for the podcast.
Oh, you've got 4 pages of notes here. Oh, sorry, Christian. Oh, sorry.
No, obviously they're changing focus to the 2026 car, and they'll get what they can out of this for the rest of the season. But I think they're in it. They must be in a position now where they've got to be looking at the McLaren, thinking there's no way we can develop the car enough with our current budget when we're focusing on 2026 as well, to try and get close to them. This is not going to happen. So, they've got what they've got.
From their perspective, if they could come second for the Constructors' Championship, because let's be honest, no one's going to clash McLaren at this point in time, their goal will be, well, as long as we can come second, that's a win.
That would be a big win. Yeah. And they're still they're 28 points ahead of Mercedes at the moment. They can see Antonelli's been struggling a little bit. Mercedes seemed to take a step backwards during this round. Like, they really didn't have a good weekend, pace.
Did they?
No, they were off the pace a fair bit.
Didn't have a great drive.
And Russell won this race last year and was disqualified because of his car being underweight. And look, with Spa, they don't do the usual finish lap where they go and pick up rubber off the track, which can add a couple of kilos to the car. So he was 1.5 kilos underweight, which disqualified him and gave Hamilton the win. But Russell was saying that he wasn't seeing the new direction for the Silver Arrows actually getting the result that they're wanting to achieve.
No, he said they'd taken a step backwards and they didn't understand why. Have to go away and look at it. But
it was quite interesting listening to the pits talking to Lewis as well, going, Lewis, we need you to coast. We need you to lift off and coast, which made me think he either didn't have the right amount of fuel in his car again. Or, I'm like, but they said that was probably 15 laps from the end. They were going, Lewis, we actually need you to start lifting and coasting. And I'm thinking, I would laugh so hard if he ran out of fuel, but they surely couldn't have made that mistake.
That was interesting. Like, they always underfuel cars a little bit, so they'll never fill the car up so you can run like full throttle the whole race. So in every race, every team is going to do some lift and coast because the weight is just too much of a penalty. So they want to get away with the least amount of fuel they can. But that sort of surprised me. It was like, well, he was lifting, coasting a lot through the whole race, which is one of the reasons he wasn't able to get past Albon. Maybe they thought the race was going to be wetter than it turned out to be, because a wet race, you're not going to be on throttle as long, and you can run a bit less fuel. But we didn't hear noises like that from the other teams. So
that's what I thought. It was only Ferrari that came out and said it. And I was like, God, if they haven't fueled that car right.
Oh, guys, I'm out of fuel. I was waiting for that.
I'll just park it across the track. That'll be fine.
But the fight is definitely on for the second place in the championship, because McLaren are more than double Ferrari's points. So they're uncatchable. So it's 516 to 248. So the battle's just on between Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull.
Let's be honest. First place is in no doubt, really, is it? No. I mean, if Ferrari can come away with a second this year, then that's actually a pretty good result for them.
It's worth a fair bit of money
based
too.
on that. Yeah.
Well, it's the first loser.
They get all their bonuses and everything else as part of the Concord agreement. So, look, Ferrari are always going to be happy when it comes time to dishing out their share of the pie. They get a bit more than everyone else. But, yeah, finishing second will definitely help. The other thing, we mentioned Red Bull Racing. Yuki got the new floor that Max had been running and had that in – I think he had that in quali and said that it gave him more confidence. He did better. I think he qualified in a higher position. Wasn't quite as far off Max as he was in the last few rounds. So maybe there's a bit of hope there that Yuki can get a bit more pace and they can get a few more points.
And do we see that as being the influence of Laurent coming from the Racing Bulls? Yuki coming from the Racing Bulls, he was performing well. He'd been promoted, as we all said, a bit late as to when he should have. But now with Laurent Mekies coming into that, is there going to be a bit more distribution in regards to how the drivers are treated within Red Bull?
To be fair, he still came 13th. It wasn't like a blinding, blistering run.
Yeah.
No, he did drop from 7th backwards, so he didn't have the best race, but his one lap pace definitely seemed a bit better.
And seeing him in interviews as well, there was a lot more confidence in him. He felt good about coming into this race. And even when it was raining and they'd all come off, they interviewed him. He's there going, I just want to get out on the track. So there was that confidence there.
Well, he probably needs
what
to
one lap
enjoy
can
it
do for you.
Yeah. But rumor is he's only got 6 months left before he's out anyway, so he might as well enjoy it.
He might as well have fun with it now. He won't be there next year.
Absolutely.
So, look, before we get into the championship standings and, of course, the predictions, just one last thing I wanted for us to just have a comment on was the tyre selection. I know we've discussed this in previous pods around, but we do have the 6 different compounds for this. And there was a few episodes before we actually mentioned about putting some gaps in there. I hope that this, with the inters, this doesn't kill what Pirelli was trying to achieve with putting a gap between the C1 and the C3. I'd actually like to, and I think, as we look at this, is we could actually look at some broader gaps, or even, maybe a couple of gaps between the hard and the medium to allow a little bit more strategy around the tyre selections.
So this weekend we saw Lando and Piastri obviously do different strategies or different tyres after that first pit stop. But what I found interesting was that Lando was chucking down some quick laps. He was getting fastest lap numerous times and ongoing, and apart from a few mistakes, which I think was just him having to chase Oscar, he was going fast. And again, you don't know whether Oscar was maybe not pushing as much because of trying to maintain his tyres, so you don't know. But if we're just looking at hards compared to mediums, and the 2 tyre gap now, or the 2 compound gap from the hards to mediums in this round, the hards were still off quick tyre.
Probably quicker than people expected, but then don't forget that McLaren probably had to make a call fairly early on in Oscar's stint as to whether they would pit again, and if they're going to pit again, then Oscar would have gone flat out. But I think nearly immediately they would have decided that they were going to try and get those tyres to the end, because he came out, Lando was like 8 or 9 seconds behind him. So he had a pretty good buffer. But the idea would be normally, Dan, the medium would be quicker and you would build a bit of a gap, pit, and then catch up to the hard runner and maybe get past them. But in Spa there, because you saw how hard it was to overtake if cars were on similar performance, similar sort of strategy. So track position made a big difference.
Yeah. So even if Oscar did push hard and pit, he was going to end up coming out behind Lando.
Yep. And potentially behind Leclerc as well.
Yeah, that was the point. He was 18 seconds.
Yeah. And he'd have to overtake 2 cars then to get the win.
Yeah.
Whereas Lando could afford to, at that point, manage the tyre. So Oscar said after the race he was managing, Oscar set 2 personal best laps near the very end of the race. So he obviously had a bit left in the tyre. So he was just doing his best to manage. But I think the other thing we're talking about here is we've seen this season so far, up to the first half of the season, that now that Lando has a more competent driver next to him in Oscar, when Lando's under pressure to try and get the job done or try and catch Oscar or do something, he's made some mistakes. And he's done that in previous rounds. And again, overnight at Spa, he locked up a brake twice. He ran wide in a corner once. So he probably made 3 mistakes in the last 15 laps, which would have cost him a total of probably around 2 seconds, maybe 2.5 seconds. So if he hadn't have made those mistakes, he would have been in DRS chasing Oscar down for the win and might have got the win, right? So I just think it's worth noting. I think Lando has to stop making mistakes. Like, Oscar is not making mistakes. He's being calm, methodical, driving well, not making errors, and Lando seems to be the one that needs to lift a bit and not make those mistakes. Lando's been around longer than Oscar, but at the moment, Oscar is proving that he's probably more championship material than Lando. And the way I was thinking about it this morning was, well, if Lando was leading the race and if it was Max that was chasing Lando down, would Max make those mistakes? No, probably not.
No.
Would Lewis or someone else like that make mistakes? Probably not. Do you think Oscar would make mistakes chasing down Lando? No, probably not. So Oscar has done himself even more favours this weekend. I think when you look at his performance, how measured the drive was, I think Lando would be, he didn't seem disappointed after the race, but I think he would be kicking himself because he let a potential win get away. He had that hard tyre, like you said, Dan, that had more tyre life in it. He was setting fast lap times. He had obviously had the pace to catch up, but he pushed just that little bit hard and made a mistake.
Yeah, in the last probably 4 to 8 laps, I was expecting there to be more.
Greg Norman did.
For them to be closer, for there to be something interesting about to happen and something to unfold.
It could have been. Yeah, and that's what I thought was going to happen.
Like you said, a few times, then you watch and you go, hang on, what happened there? He's just dropped a second or two. And then it happened again. It's like, then obviously you see the commentary, they go, he's missed this corner, he's oversteer, understeer, whatever he did in these few spots. And yeah, the commentary was exactly what you said. It was had he not made those 2 or 3 mistakes, then that would have been a different.
That's the thing, but he was gaining half a second a lap, without pushing overly hard. He knows if you make a mistake, especially in a high commitment corner like Pouan, where that's flat out, like that's an amazing corner at 5Gs. If you make a mistake there, the car got twitchy. He caught it. It cost him over a second, but worst case, he would have ended up in the fence in a massive, massive accident there. So he just needs to dial it back just a fraction and make sure he gets to the battle at least,
So with that, we obviously saw Piastri driving smoothly, calmly, and bringing it across the line for the win, followed by Lando in second and Charles in third. So as we look at that, that puts Oscar firmly in the lead with 16 points ahead of his teammates, so at 266 points, with Max coming in at third, 81 points now behind Oscar Piastri. So, I mean, this is where it's over 2 race wins.
It's a growing gap.
So we're seeing a definite strength in McLaren, the 2 McLaren drivers being up front and the battle being between those. It's still a race win between them, and we would have seen a 2-point gap if the result was the other way around. So again, Oscar being able to just stamp that down to be able to show that it puts, Happy, to your point, McLaren well ahead of everyone else, more than double Ferrari at this stage. And we're seeing Ferrari coming in with 268 points behind McLaren, but Mercedes 28 points behind Ferrari. And again, ironically, Red Bull Racing 28 points behind Mercedes. So,
but the Drivers' Championship looks good between like Max, George, and Charles. They've still got their own battle that they can potentially, still swap places and all that. Whereas it's sort of Lando and Oscar, and then Max, George, Charles,
everyone else. Yep,
that's the other one. But then it drops away after that. So, but you look at that and go, the top 5, you could still have movements between those ones. That will be where the championship sort of is then.
Yeah, 100%.
What's interesting for me is actually having a look at the tail end of the field, or the midfield, should we say, where we've got Kick Sauber, Racing Bulls, Aston Martin, and Haas really close. So Kick Sauber's got 43, Racing Bulls at 41, Aston at 36, and Haas at 35. So that's where my eyes are at the moment in regards to seeing how this is going to play out, because for these teams, it's about wind tunnel time. It's about $10 million per position gained.
Or more, yep.
Or more,
Go Kick Sauber. Go Kick Sauber.
Nico Hülkenberg.
But yeah, so seeing that play out will be really interesting come the tail end of the season, because it will make a difference for them going into 2026.
These smaller teams that are at the bottom, though, how are they going to really manage the reg changes and development of a new package next year?
Just like everyone else. Depends on the quality of their staff and ideas, and are they making their own engines or buying them in? Like, you might get a few surprises.
Yeah, I mean, look, what Haas is known to be a small team compared to the likes of Mercedes, for example, and no doubt McLaren. But yeah, just sort of, and again, everyone's going, oh, it's good if they finished in the bottom, they get more wind tunnel time and all the rest of it. But that's fine if they don't utilize that time and know what to do with it, then it's not really going to help much, is it?
That's it. You can put a racehorse in the wind tunnel, or you can put a pony in the wind tunnel. Like, what are you going to find?
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that there's not smart people at these at these lower outfits, because they're obviously doing quite well with, I mean, Haas didn't have a terrible weekend. Like at one point I'm going, oh, they're actually doing all right in some of their qualifying and stuff. That wasn't dead last. It was a bit surprising, Aston Martin sort of didn't do very well with, and again, I can't remember now, that was 2 qualifyings, but they were both out in the first one. But, they're obviously not doing too bad with the packages they've got. So, yeah.
As you look at 2026, this is the great leveler. I mean, we've got new regs coming in, new power units. We've got, and to your point, Dan, around these teams, is they've got money behind them. So, you've got Williams, who's now got Atlassian as a naming sponsor, who's invested for the longer term. They're running a Mercedes power unit, which, look, we understand there's been some struggles with that this year. You've got Kicksaba, who's Audi powerhouse. So that's a massive change for that team. You've got Racing Bulls, which is part of the Red Bull franchise. So there's tons of cash sitting behind there. And you've got Aston Martin with Lawrence Stroll, who has put bucket loads of money into that team. And, I think that's the dark horse for 2026.
So you're saying Haas is up against it?
I'm just surprised that, with, Flavio's leadership, that Alpine hasn't sort of risen up through the ranks a little bit. Like, I would have thought with the quality of leadership that he delivers, that they might have, come up a bit further. That's all. Maybe it's just me. I don't know.
As long as he doesn't tell anyone to crash.
Flavio's just waiting for Christian.
Oh, look, that's it. He's cutting down the costs so he can sell it at a good profit, get $1 billion, and then walk
Maybe
away.
That's what it is. Yep.
Sell it to Christian Horner. Anyway, we should get to our predictions.
We should get to our predictions. So, as we were saying, in regards to the result, we had Lando Norris, who got pole, followed by Oscar Piastri, who won the race with Lando in second and Charles in third. Where should we start? Well, we may as well. Well, okay, Magic Hat. Unfortunately, Schwags, it didn't pay off for you this weekend. We were quite excited with the prospect of Oscar getting pole, with Max Verstappen taking first, Lewis coming in second, and George in third. Unfortunately, none of that was realised.
The Magic Hat, it did vomit up a few good names. Like you had Oscar, Max, Lewis, and George. They were just, unfortunately, not in the top 3 or pole.
I was excited by what the Magic Hat was offering.
Yeah. I thought it could be on for some points here. Bad luck.
But we saw the rest of us, all 3 of us, picking Oscar Piastri for first. None of us got pole for the race. And then, Happy, you got an extra couple of points taking Lando for second place. So where that puts us for the leaderboard, Schwags, unfortunately, sitting in with 13 points in fourth place, followed by myself in third in 26, with Lockie getting ahead at 28 in second place, and Happy going into the 30s with 31 points, with a nice lead above the rest of us.
Bugger.
No, I wouldn't call it skipping away, mate. It's
you know how long it takes me to get 3 points? That's not skipping away, trust me. That's weeks of work for me to get 3 points.
Skipping merrily.
So with that rounds out the Spa preview and our predictions for this race. We have
I
more
think
race.
Spa wrap-up, not preview.
Oh, sorry, Spa wrap-up. So I just want another round of Spa. I love it that much. So look, that wraps this episode of the pod up. We will be coming to you with the preview of the Hungarian Grand Prix at the Hungaroring on Thursday. So be sure to like and subscribe so that you don't miss a single episode, and we'll see you on the next lap. And that's the checkered flag for this episode of The Downshift. Thanks for tuning in and hanging out with us in the paddock. If you enjoyed the ride, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss a lap. And hey, if we've earned it, drop us a 5-star review. It really helps us climb the grid and reach more motorsport fans. Tune in next time as we keep pushing flat out to bring you fresh, current, and entertaining content. Until next time, keep it fast, keep it fun, and we'll catch you on the next lap.